Hey guys, Martin here. Today I wanted to do a quick overview of a showdown that I came first place in, the deck I used, sort of what my experience is, what my strategies are, just to help anyone that might want to run this deck themselves. It's very strong, not many people are going to expect it, it's pretty good. I also say at the end that there is another showdown I went with a different deck, or I came second place. If you want to see that, let me know in the comments. Quick shout out to the two shops that hosted the two events. One was Dice and Pins on the Whirl, and the other being Just Play Games in Liverpool, which is my local shop that I go to every Friday. Great places to play, very fun community. I love everyone there, they're all great. And also a shout out to Mark from Unlimited Power for doing the updates on every store showdown and giving us a shout out too. So thank you to him. I'll probably only be going over the one deck today that I came first with, that being the Boba Red deck. However, if you guys want to see a video on the deck that I came second with, which was a Palpatine Green deck, this one's a bit more common, but if you want to see that, let us know in the comments below. And I'll make a video explaining how I dealt with certain matchups and what differences my deck has to the usual type, sort of my thought process behind each game. So this is it, this is my Boba Red deck. So those of you who have watched videos on here before might remember that we attended the OPE event in Manchester a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and I ran a Boba Red in there. Now I've got a video on that one, not a breakdown, but just sort of our reviews of the event. If you want to check that out, link in description. But yeah, the deck has changed not too much from that. A lot of the end game units have now ended up in the sideboard, notably the crate and the Change of Hearts, I think, are in the main deck. I don't remember. But now I've sort of gone for the what I think was missing with the Triple Dark Crate from that deck, and that's TIE Advanced, because before my only targets for TIE Advanced were TIE Defender and TIE Phantom, and Raider as well, but you never really got the chance to do that with the Raider, because the Raider was pretty much an endgame thing. But now I added the triple generic tie, the tie LN, and I think 9 targets for tie advanced, well, plus I guess tie advancing itself if I had one on the board already and to play a second one. Sure, that's another option, but I think that's enough because the tie advanced is such a powerful unit to come out of Triple Dark Raid in general. If I miss the real targets, which are the Raider and the Fire Spray. A few other changes, mostly just I took out 1 copy of Surprise Strike, 1 copy of Outmaneuver, and 1 copy of No Good to Me Dead. And in its place, that's what came out with the triple tie. And then I dropped 1 copy of Bosk and the 2 Crate Dragons for the triple tie advanced. And that's pretty much all the changes I did to the main deck. The 1 copy of No Good to Me Dead went into the sideboard, and the 2 Crate Dragons went into the sideboard. Other than that, the sideboard has only kept the 2 Fang Fighters. I'll say notably though, triple sneak attack is amazing. I am so tempted to put them in the main deck somehow. It's just trouble finding where to squeeze it in. Probably only go 2 in the main deck, 1 in the sideboard, something like that. But it is just so much fun, and it's so powerful against sort of control decks, which we'll get into when we do the matchups. All in all, it's a fairly simple deck to run. So let's get into the matchups then. We'll start with the most common matchup you're probably going to run into, and honestly, one of the matchups where you're most favoured. And I'll say right now that at Manchester, when this deck was slightly worse into this matchup, which is Sabine Green, I played against 4 Sabines, and I beat 3, lost to 1, and the one that I played against was like the last Sabine I played at the end of a day. I was making a lot of mistakes, and they had a lot of removal in the main deck, which was surprising. That's not usual for this kind of matchup. But essentially what you want to do against Sabine is turn 1, play a 2-drop space unit or 2 1-drop space units, whatever you have, and for the rest of the game you kind of just want to remove stuff, and then once you ready stuff with Boba, you play another cheap space unit, and that's sort of the game plan. You say turn 1 Kylo's tie, turn 2 force choke the ground unit they played, ready a resource, play a mercenary gunship, something like that. It's great. It's a really hard matchup for Sabine, and in the store showdown, once again, I played against 4 Sabines again. One of them was double red, the rest were all green, ECL green, of course, and I beat every single one, so it is a really good matchup now, just because the amount of removal you have. As for what you should mulligan and look for in your first hand, the obvious easiest one is you want a turn 1 space unit, and then you want 2 pieces of removal. That's pretty much it. I think you can get away with 1 piece of removal, 1 turn 1, and having a Bosk in hand, especially if that's pre-mulligan. You don't want to risk mulliganing for more. You don't want to get too greedy. And I mentioned Bosk as well, because Bosk is insane against Sabine. When you get to the 5 resource turn, and this actually happened, it's happened twice. Once was in a warm-up game, a locals before the showdown, and the second time was actually in the showdown in the finals. You basically get to the 5 resource turn, you sort of delay as much as possible, hit the base with all your space stuff, don't spend any resources, do whatever, and then hope that they've already spent all their resources, whatever. You're going to have to take a lot of damage to the base on this turn for this. Then, as soon as you have nothing else to do to delay, because you don't want to pass in case they claim, that ruins you, you just put down Bosk, you ambush into something and kill it. You need Bosk to live. You need to make sure that Bosk doesn't die here. You then ready 1 resource with Boba, so now you got 1 resource open. They do whatever. Most Sabines don't know what to come into, they'll just hit the base. Then you deploy Boba, kill another unit with Boba, or if it's something with high health, you damage it with Boba. Say I like to do this into Darksaber Sabine or something, because Boba will live off of that. Then you ready up 2 more resources, you got 3 resources, and with Bosk on board, you now got free reign to play so many events with the Bosk damage. So I think in the showdown it was he claimed, because I had 3 units in space that all attacked and he ran out of stuff to do, so he just claimed. So I played Bosk, ambushed into a K2, he did 3 damage to base, sure. I deployed Boba, hit his Sabine that had a Darksaber for 4 with Boba, ready 2 more resources, and I played a Daring Raid, which did 2 damage to one of his units and 2 damage to Sabine. And then I played a No Good To Me Dead, which exhausted the other unit that I couldn't kill, and then finished off the Sabine Darksaber and finished off the other unit that I damaged. This is a pseudo board wipe, and it's amazing on turn 5. This is your win condition almost to beat Sabine on turn 5. They pretty much can't come back from this, especially if you've got space units on board still. You pretty much just win from here. But it will feel like sometimes the winning player is just whoever rolled in the high roll higher and got initiative on the first round. As for sideboard against Sabine, I'd say honestly you don't really need to change much. You can drop the 2 surprise strikes because you're not as fast as Sabine, so you're not going to be playing the aggro matchup, and you can put in either Fang fighters if you think they're going to be playing Darksaber, which most of the time they are. I think that's it really. If you want to, you can try and find a way to put the 3rd No Good To Me Dead in and drop, I don't know, you could drop a tie advance or something. That could be fine. But most of the time, yeah, I didn't really think about that too much. I would just put 2 Fang fighters in for the surprise strikes and just leave it at that. It's honestly, sometimes you can just not sideboard anything and you'll probably be fine, because sometimes the surprise strike is more useful than getting rid of the Darksaber. Second most common matchup, this one's going to be tough. That's Yellow Boba. I'll be honest, I actually haven't played against Yellow Boba with this deck too many times. I've only played against it like 3 times in my time, and it's never been in the showdown. I played against it once in Manchester with the different version of this deck, and I think this version will do better into it than that one did. I'll say right now it's tough. Okay, you know what? I'm going to throw Boba Green in here too. Any Boba really is tough. Boba Red, mirror match might just come down to as initiative, but Boba Yellow, Boba Green, Boba Blue, it's... Since all your removal is damage based, right? If they get Boba's armor on Boba Leader, you're pretty much done. Like, you have to get your Fang Fighters in the sideboard into the main deck and then hope to remove the Boba's armor. If you're against Boba Green, which is the most brutal one, Boba's armor on Boba Leader followed up by Overwhelming Barrage is brutal. You can't do anything to that, and they just wipe all of your space units. You pretty much just lose right there. So yeah, Boba Yellow is the most common one, although Green has started to take over at the moment. Unfortunately, my best advice is try your best to just not pair into these guys, you know. It's going to be luck based here, because you really don't want this matchup, and it's definitely the hardest one. You can try into Boba Blue and Boba Green by just sort of being the aggro player. I think this is the only way I won a round against Boba Green. Against the guy who won in Manchester, I won a round by just going aggro. Against Boba Yellow, though, it's like you don't even have the aggro as an option. You're kind of just stuck, because his end game is the same as yours. So even if you just play the removal game, he's getting damaged through, you're not. What, you're gonna end with like Fire Spray and Change Your Heart? Like, it's not good. You can win, it just requires them to draw poorly and use the draw well, is the problem. So, I don't know. Unfortunately, this is the hardest matchup. Something that isn't as hard, though, is the next most common, is Hand Blue, then the new Hand Blue. I've played against this a lot with this deck. There are ways in which they can really mess you up, and those are Pillage and Force Throw. These will just ruin you, especially if they have a Force unit on board and they can remove a unit on the board as well as remove a card from your hand, since most of your units are 2 health, 1 health, maybe 3 health most. Sure, TIE Phantom can't be damaged by it, and TIE Defender would just lose its shield, but overall, you are favoured, I think, because Hand Blue he sort of struggles to deal with space. They haven't got much for space. Some will run the Concord Dawn Interceptors. That is a brutal card to play against, but you have got a lot of removal. It just means you'll have to be using your removal on that instead of removing their force units, which is the main thing you want to do against Hand Blue, is make sure they don't have a force unit on board. So just try your best to play the aggro matchup, and if they have a force unit on board, that's where you pivot to destroy it, and then go back to being aggro. These matches are going to be long, I'll tell you that. Probably the most powerful thing you can do against them is go all in on TIE Phantom and the TIE Advanced combo, because if you can get TIE Advanced past 6 health, then they have no way to kill it anymore. And 6 health you might think is pretty crazy to get to, but it's actually only a triple dark raid out of TIE Advanced and then play the TIE Advanced the next turn away to get into 6 health. And even at 6 health, the only way they kill it is with deploying Luke after they've lost a unit. But most of the time, by the time they get there, you've done so much damage with a 6 attack or 8 attack TIE Phantom that they can't get rid of. So yeah, that is a great way to win. Other way to win is from the sideboard. Change Your Heart in their Lukes and their Chewbaccas. This is sometimes impossible for them to deal with. Luke especially is their sort of end game, and you can just steal it for a turn and you heal. And most of the time you can even trade it into a unit if you want. Very powerful. But like I said earlier about the sideboard, triple sneak attack is a great surprise play against them. You surprise strike out a Ruthless Raider, and it comes in, does 2 damage to their base, 2 damage to a unit, hits the base for 4, and then it dies at the end of the turn, doing 2 damage to base and 2 damage to a unit. So that's 8 damage to base off of a 5 resource play. It's an amazing game ender, but as I found in the showdown, because I played against two hand blues, both ran by the same person, it was just once in the Swiss and then once in the finals. If they pillage you when you've got the sneak attack raider in hand, it's like the most mental breaking thing. Like, I want to give up at that point. So yeah, be careful with this. The other thing is Crate Dragon. Like I said earlier, I'm tempted to take Crate Dragon out the sideboard now and just remove it in general. But it can be good against hand blue. It's hard to get to 8 or 9 resources, and I say 8 resources because sneaking attacking out the Crate Dragon is so fun. But yeah, if you get it out, then you pretty much win. It's just hard to get it out, I guess, because they're removing your cards from your hand, and you have to get to that many resources, so it's quite tough. Against hand blue, what are you looking for in your opening hand? I'd say probably you want to turn 1 play easily. Kylo's Tie is the best one. Surprisingly, Cartel Spacer isn't bad because the extra health can be helpful if they're the kind of hand that runs the sort of X-Wing for some reason, something like that. Doesn't help great against A-Wing, but it can sometimes be useful. It's a bit harder for them to remove, especially if they force throw you early on, because it has 3 health. A lot of the time you'll discard something that does 2 damage to it. It's quite nice. Other than that, you might want to look for TIE Phantom and Triple Dark Raid, but I'm not sure if it's worth mulliganing if you have a turn 1 play really for that, but it's quite good. What you want to sideboard in is definitely No Good to Me Dead, the triple sneak attack, and the 2 Change of Heart. Gauntlet Fighter, not too useful. They don't really run too many upgrades that you want to remove, like they run Entrenched, can be a problem, but most of the time they only run 1 or 2 copies, so if it goes on late, then you might want to be careful there. Sure, maybe put it in. Crate Dragon, like I said, I might take this out the sideboard, but if it is in your sideboard, consider it. If you don't think you're going to get to that many resources anyway, don't bother. One side note I forgot to mention, Force Throw. Might as well mention it here because I'm going to talk about what to remove with the sideboard. Force Throw is great removal, sure, but against hand blue and against villain control as well, when we get to that, you're drawing them an extra card. And in this matchup, that extra card does matter. Sometimes it doesn't. You know, sometimes it could draw them into nothing. Sure. But there's times where you should think, right? Should I force choke this guy? Or should I let him just hit the base and stay alive for a bit? At the cost of, you know, they didn't get to draw a card, because there's been times where I've had to force choke force units, sure, because that's pretty important. But they've drawn like 2 cards for force choking Yoda, and it's brutal. So what you want to remove is the sideboard. So you're putting the 6 cards in that I mentioned, right? You're putting in No Good to Me Dead, you're putting triple sneak attack in, you're putting 2 Change of Heart in. The 6 cards I'd probably remove are, I'd say 1 Force Choke. You could potentially remove the 2 Surprise Strike. If you're going full aggro, then you need it, but most of the time I don't think you're fast enough to aggro them out. I don't typically remove it, but it depends. It's an option, I guess. You can remove the 2 Bosks, I think. That's a good idea. And then you should remove the triple TIE Fighter. Final most common matchup is sort of hard control, blue villainy, blue-green villainies, kind of soft control. That's pretty common too. Pretty much the same matchup almost as hand blue, except they've got more removal. You want to just go all in on TIE Phantom again. You've got to try with the Surprise Strike Raiders again. It's all about the fire sprays. It's about the waylays. It's about Triple Dark Raid. It's about Change of Heart. And this is another matchup that is making me... It's the reason why I'm arguing myself to keep Crate or not. Because Crate Dragon against control is really good, especially with sneak attack. So, I don't know, try yourself. Practice against this. See how it goes. I think this is definitely going to be a more thought-provoking match. Whereas when you play against aggro, it's pretty brain dead almost. But when you play against hand blue and hard control, every decision you make is important. you're going to be playing the aggro, but at the same time, you also need to think in the back of your mind, sort of, you can only aggro up to a certain amount, and once they get to sort of 8 resources or so, that's when you need to figure out something, what you're going to do later. Sneak attacking the raider, good one. TIE Phantom with a ton of experience is a good one. You got to worry about traitorous though against green villain. Sideboarding against villain control, you might as well just go back and look at what I said for the hand blue one, because it's kind of the same thing. You want to put in sneak attacks, no good to me there, and change your hearts. This one, I'll say, you pretty much do want to put in a crate dragon, because it's pretty strong into them. The only problem is finding out what to remove at that point, because you're now putting in 8 cards from your sideboard. And sometimes you even put 10 in if there's someone who runs triple entrenched, which a lot of blue villainy does, so... yeah, removing 10 is very hard. I'll say you probably want to remove the cartel spaces, the 2 Bosks, remove probably maybe even triple Force Choke, just because you don't want them drawing a card. And they don't really play a lot of ground units, even if they do. A lot of it's just Sentinels, which you don't really care about. So maybe keep 1 Force Choke, I guess. Then I'd say probably remove the 2 outmaneuvers, because you're not going to use it much. They normally only bring like 1 big unit rather than a ton, which the triple no good to me dead will be enough. The final one is sort of up to you. You can go no daring raid, you can go maybe a TIE fighter out. Just up to you really. Overall, that's not a bad matchup though. If I was to rank the matchups from easiest to hardest, it'll be Sabine easiest, hand blue, villain control, and then way down is Boba yellow, Boba green as the hardest matchups you're going to play against. I'd feel sorry for you if you end up going against multiple in a tournament. Nothing you can do, sometimes it just happens. You can potentially win against Boba green, but it's tough. One thing to note here, if you haven't played Boba before, I will say that this deck especially really enjoys all of the sort of 1-cost events and the 1-cost units. In this deck though, we only have the triple generic TIE and the triple daring raid. Essentially the idea is, against aggro especially, right, you remove something, you ready a resource, maybe you have 1 resource left because you did open fire or something on turn 2, and so you just get to play a TIE fighter or a daring raid for free. Daring raid, especially if you remove something with it, it's basically a 0-cost event with Boba. These 1-drops can be super important. Less important later on. That's when the 2-drops become more important. So yeah, keep those in mind when you're resourcing. You don't want to resource the 1-drops every time, because sometimes you want to turn 1 play a unit, turn 2 do a 3-cost removal, ready a resource, and play a TIE fighter. It can be very powerful. So that was the deck review and sort of the advice and the strategy that I go for with it. Let me just talk about the showdown itself now, and my experience. So this is the dice and pins one I talked about where I came first. So I've got to say a lot of the games were pretty hard. Some of them not so much, but that was just due to those matchups being pretty great. I played against 4 Sabines in the showdown, which was pretty funny, especially since I played 4 Sabines in Manchester as well. It makes sense, it is the most common deck at the moment, although I believe Boba Green is starting to overtake that recently. So out of the 4 Sabines I played against, 2 of them were 2-0 wins to me, and the other 2 were 2-1 wins to me. Things you gotta watch out for, again, like I mentioned, Darksaber and stuff really can screw you. But overall, it's a fun match. Not sure how fun it is for the Sabine player, unfortunately. I mean, you're just removing all their stuff. It is kind of a no fun for them, almost. But the people I played against were fun. We had a great time talking. And I hope to play against them soon, maybe with a bit more fun deck for them. One of which, by the way, was Dom from this channel. Which was probably the highlight of the day, was when he played For a Cause I Believe In against me, and I'm not going to let this one go, and I think even he still has nightmares about it. So when he played for a cause, he did 1 damage because he drew 1 hope and then triple Dark Saber out of the for a cause, which I've never seen that before. That was amazing, and we couldn't stop laughing at the time. And that was in the final as well, so I feel very bad for him. That was super bad luck, but it was funny. The other things I played against, like I say, I played against Han Blue twice. It was the same player. He destroyed me in the Swiss. He 2-0'd me. It was absolutely brutal. And then, funny enough, we played in the final. It was literally just us two, first and second place, fighting each other. And I managed to pull it back. 2-1 win to me on that one. Win the whole thing overall. Very tough matchup sometimes. But, like I say, if you know what you're doing, you can navigate around it and sort of plan to go around. The final game was so close, the third game out of that round, because his base was on 2 health left, so he had to just keep removing my stuff, and he kept removing it, kept playing stuff down, sentinels and such. He was looking for a way out. His way out was something like redemption, maybe. Whereas my way out was just, I needed to draw my daring raids, my raiders, or my triple dark raids. That's what I was looking for. And it was about 4 rounds of just sort of me doing stuff to him stopping it. I'd play down cheap units, he'd remove it. I'd play change a heart on his units, he'd entrench his own units when I change a heart them, just to stop me from getting that 2 damage on base. And it kept going. Neither of us were drawing what we needed until eventually I drew a raider to finish the game. And we did check afterwards that he would have drew redemption on the next turn, so it was that close. And in fact, it was so close that there was a point where he forced through a force choke out my hand. Had I not lost that force choke and I played that on him at some point, then he actually would have won the game, which is funny. And it just goes back to what I was saying about force choke against hand blue and control. Sometimes you don't want to play it because it can win them the game. As for the other two, I played against a Boba Green. This guy playing Boba Green, I don't know, we had a great time. He destroyed me absolutely, but I still had a lot of fun. He's a great guy to play against, and I hope to play against him again. Like I've said, most of the time he gets Boba armor on Boba unit, I'm just done. There's nothing I can do, especially with the overwhelming barrage afterwards. Yeah, that's a brutal match. I don't really have an out there, but I had fun still. I managed to, get pretty close both times. But he can stabilize pretty well with that deck, so. And the other game was against something I didn't expect, which was a Han Yellow, a young Han Yellow. Unfortunately, I think my deck just does well into that. I wasn't really sure what to expect from his deck because it was a bit of a surprise deck. But most of his sort of, how hand decks normally are, where they play like a Luke or something at the end. That's sort of the end game there, play a Crate Dragon, whatever. His deck didn't really have that because he was yellow, so he had the Crate Dragons, I think, though he never got to it. But his big end game units were stuff like Chewbacca, the Sentinel one, Han unit, the 6/6 with shoot first, and that's about it really. Which, I guess he had Wreckers and Poes as well. But if you can tell from all of those units, a lot of them are so powerful because they have a way to immediately remove a ground unit. Against me, that's useless. Like, even the Han unit he plays doesn't kill my Boba leader unless it's already damaged. The only other ground unit I'm playing is Bosk. So Wrecker's ability doesn't do anything. Poe is, sure, he's strong, but he doesn't have a way to ambush him out to get the effect off, so he just puts that down and then I either waylay it or remove it with removal, whatever. Han unit is useless. Chewbacca unit, pretty useless. So, yeah, overall, unfortunately for him, this was an impossible matchup, I think. This is just brutal. It got pretty close sometimes, but the removal is just too much, and I'm all in space, and he has almost no answers in space besides something like Falcon and A-Wing. But yeah, tough matchup, but I did enjoy playing against the guy. So overall, it was a great time, and I definitely will go there again for the next door showdown, maybe some pre-releases, and I might even start going to the locals. I hadn't been before. It's in a great area, and it's a really interesting place because it's above a bowling alley, which is pretty fun. So I don't know. Might have to go there again. All the people there seem great. Now, this video is getting on already, pretty long, so I'm not going to talk about the second showdown, but if you want me to do a video on the second showdown, I can, because I ran a different deck, and this was at Just Play Games, my local, in Liverpool. I ran Palpatine Green, so I thought if I'm going to do a video on this one, it'll be a separate one, because I'd have to talk about the strategy for that, which is completely different, obviously. But I came second in that one. That was a lot of fun. Even played against the same hand blue again. We always have matchups in every tournament. It's always fun. I enjoy doing it. So if you want to see that video on the second source showdown, let me know in the comments below. And also let us know if you've done any store showdowns yourself and how you performed, what decks you're running, as well as what you think about my decks and what changes you might make, and any questions you have for how to run it. I'll be sure to respond in the comments. Don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe as well. It really helps us out. Thank you for watching, Gonk Gang. See you next time.